My husband's casket was still warm when my sister-in-law, Laura, stood up at his funeral and declared she deserved his company more than I did. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, sharp and unexpected, cutting through the fog of grief that had wrapped around me since Mark died 2 weeks ago. I was sitting in the front pew, my hands clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms, leaving little half-moon marks that stung. The church was packed, family, friends, employees from Jacobson & Co., all dressed in black, their whispers and sniffles filling the air like a low hum. And then there was Laura, arms crossed, her face hard as stone, her eyes darting around like she was bored. I should have known she'd pull something, but I was too broken, too hollowed out to see it coming. When she spoke, her voice rang out over the crowd, dripping with entitlement. "I deserve his business more than you, Emma. You'll run it into the ground." I stopped breathing for a second. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone muttered, "Is she serious?" I felt my hands tremble, grief and rage twisting together inside me like a storm. Mark wasn't even in the ground yet, and she was already clawing at his legacy. I stood up slow, wiping tears from my cheeks, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. "That's funny," I said, my voice shaky but steady enough, "because I have a surprise for you. My name's Emma Jacobson. I'm 38, a graphic designer by trade, though I haven't touched a sketch pad since Mark got sick last year. He was my rock, tall, broad-shouldered, with a laugh that could light up a room and a mind sharp enough to build Jacobson & Co. from a garage startup into a tech giant specializing in artificial intelligence. We met 10 years ago at a charity gala. He bid on my artwork, then asked me out over cheap coffee the next morning. I wasn't born into money or power, but Mark made me his partner in every way, through late nights brainstorming, through his cancer diagnosis, through every whispered promise that we'd get through it together. Now he's gone, and I'm left holding the pieces of a life I don't know how to live without him. That moment at the funeral wasn't the end of it. It was just the beginning. Laura's face went white as James, Mark's lawyer, pulled out the will. He adjusted his glasses, calm as ever, and read aloud. "To my beloved wife, Emma, I leave our home, our shared assets, and full ownership of Jacobson & Co. She's been my partner in every sense, and I trust her to carry on what I built." The room went still. You could hear people shifting in their seats, the weight of it sinking in. Then James kept going. "To my sister, Laura Jacobson, I leave nothing. I've provided for her enough in my lifetime, and she's shown she doesn't respect my choices." Laura shot up like she'd been electrocuted. "What?" she shrieked, her voice bouncing off the stained glass windows. "This is a lie! Mark wouldn't do this!" She lunged toward James, but Mark's best friend Chris grabbed her arm. Her eyes locked on mine, blazing with hate. "You did this!" she spat. "You tricked him!" I felt something snap inside me, a fire I didn't know I had. "Tricked him?" I said, stepping closer, my voice low and dangerous. "Mark knew exactly who you were, Laura. You never cared about him, just what he could give you." She froze, her breath coming in sharp bursts, then stormed out, nearly knocking over an old woman as the doors slammed shut behind her. I sank back into the pew, my hands still shaking. Olivia, my best friend, squeezing my shoulder. I thought that was it. I was wrong. 2 days later, I was still numb, sitting in my kitchen, staring at Mark's favorite coffee mug when my phone rang. It sat there on the counter, chipped and faded, a relic of mornings when he'd stumble in, grumbling about traffic, his hair still damp from the shower. The ringtone sliced through the silence, shrill and demanding, and I nearly dropped the cold coffee I'd been nursing for hours. Dan's name flashed on the screen, one of Mark's business partners, a burly guy with a voice like gravel and a habit of cutting straight to the point. "Emma," he said, his tone tight, like he was choking on the words, "you need to watch your back. Laura's making calls, trying to turn people against you." My stomach dropped, a sick, sinking feeling that made my hands go clammy. "What?" I managed, my voice barely a whisper. "She's saying the will was forged," he pressed on, urgency bleeding through. "That Mark wasn't in his right mind when he signed it. She's hitting up the board, old clients, hell, even some of the staff. She's on a warpath." I clenched my jaw, anger bubbling up through the exhaustion that had settled into my bones like damp rot. "That's ridiculous," I snapped, my grip tightening on the phone. It was notarized. He was lucid, sick, but lucid. I sat with him, Dan. He looked me in the eye and said I was the only one he trusted with this. Dan sighed, a long, weary sound that crackled through the line. "I know, Emma. I saw him too those last weeks, but she's desperate, and desperation makes people dangerous. I hung up, my mind spinning, the phone clattering onto the counter next to Mark's mug. Laura wasn't just grieving or greedy, she was a predator, and I was her prey. The realization settled over me like a cold sweat, sharp and unshakable. Sleep didn't come that night. I paced the house, the floorboards creaking under my bare feet, shadows stretching across the walls like fingers reaching for me. Every noise, the hum of the fridge, the wind rattling the windows, felt like Laura creeping closer, her claws out. By morning, I was a wreck, my eyes burning, my hands trembling around a mug of coffee I couldn't drink. Olivia barged in without knocking, her knock a formality she never bothered with. She was a whirlwind, short, wiry, her brown hair a mess under a cap, her laptop bag banging against her hip. "You look like death warmed over," she said, tossing her bag onto the table. "Good to see you too," I muttered, slumping into a chair. She fixed me with a hard stare, hands on her hips. "Dan called me after you, said Laura's kicking up a storm. What's your next move?" I rubbed my face, my head throbbing. "I don't know, Liv. I thought the will would end it, but she's feral." Olivia yanked out her laptop, her fingers already tapping. "She's not just feral, she's smart. I've got a source at the Chronicle. Laura's been sniffing around the company's books, looking for anything to bury you. She's not alone either. I'm chasing a lead on who's helping her." My chest tightened, a knot of dread pulling taut. "Who?" she smirked, eyes still on the screen. "Give me a day. I'll have a name." Tyler showed up that afternoon, unannounced and twitchy. He was one of Mark's first hires, barely 25, lanky, with dark hair that always fell into his eyes and a nervous habit of cracking his knuckles. He stood on my porch, clutching a stack of papers, glancing over his shoulder like he expected Laura to jump out of the bushes. "Emma, can I come in?" he asked, his voice hushed. I nodded, stepping aside, and he darted in, shutting the door with a quick shove. "What's wrong, Tyler?" I asked, my stomach doing that awful flip again. He dumped the papers on the table, his hands shaking so bad the pages rustled. "Laura came to me a month ago, before he passed. She wanted me to pull stuff, contracts, emails, anything she could use. Said she'd make me vice president if I helped her take over after he was gone." My mouth went dry, a sour taste creeping up my throat. "And what did you say?" He met my eyes, his gaze steady despite the nerves. I told her no. Mark gave me my shot, hired me when no one else would. But she's not giving up. I heard her yesterday on the phone talking about an audit. The word hit me like a slap. "An audit?" Tyler nodded, fast and jerky. "Yeah, she's trying to spook the board into ditching you. I had to tell you." I called James as soon as Tyler left, my hands still jittery as I punched in his number. "Laura's pushing for an audit," I said, the second he picked up. "Tyler just warned me." James was quiet for a beat, then his voice came through, steady as a rock. "She's bluffing, Emma. She doesn't have that kind of juice, not yet. But if she's got an inside man, we need to lock things down. I'll get on the financials." I nodded, my breath hitching. "Okay. But, James, what if she finds something? Mark was so careful, but he was fading those last months. What if—" I couldn't finish, the fear choking me. "We'll handle it," he said, softer now. "Trust me." Then came the break-in. It was 2 a.m. when my phone buzzed, the security guard's voice sharp and urgent. "Mrs. Jacobson, she's here. We've got her pinned. Cops are coming." I shot out of bed, my heart slamming against my ribs, adrenaline flooding my veins. I threw on a coat over my sweatpants, my hands fumbling with the keys as I raced to the car. The drive to Jacobson and Company was a blur, headlights slicing through the dark, my pulse pounding in my ears. When I pulled up, police lights bathed the building in red and blue, the glass facade glinting like a warning. Inside, Laura stood in Mark's office, papers strewn across the floor, her blonde hair a tangled mess, her eyes wild with rage. "This should have been mine," she screamed, thrashing as Detective Ray Alvarez, a squat, hard-eyed cop with a buzz cut, yanked her arms behind her. "Caught her with this," he said, nodding to an officer holding a small black USB drive. I stared at Laura, her gaze boring into me, and felt a bone-deep weariness settle over me, heavy as lead. "You're done," I said, my voice flat, drained. She smirked, even as the cuffs clicked shut. "You're so naive, Emma. This isn't over." They hauled her out, her shouts echoing off the walls, and I collapsed into Mark's chair, my fingers brushing a photo of us, laughing at a picnic, his hand in mine, that had fallen from the chaos. My eyes stung, but I wouldn't let the tears fall. Olivia was there by sunrise, banging on my door with 2 coffees and a grin. "Let's crack that USB," she said, shoving past me to set up on the kitchen table. I hovered behind her, my nerves frayed to threads as she hacked into it. An hour later, the screen flashed with bank records, an offshore account, $10 million, dormant for years until 3 days after Mark died. Laura's name was stamped on the withdrawal. "Jesus," Olivia whistled, leaning back. "She stole it. This is her grave, Emma." I stared at the numbers, my anger igniting, hot and fierce. "She thought she could pin this on me," I said, my voice trembling with fury. Olivia nodded, her eyes gleaming. "And she nearly did, but now we bury her." The audit landed a week later. I was in Mark's office, still adjusting to the creak of his chair, the faint scent of his cologne clinging to the leather, when Tyler burst in, his face ashen. "It's here," he said, thrusting an envelope at me, the government seal glaring up like a threat. I ripped it open, my eyes racing over the text. Full financial investigation, effective now. My stomach plummeted, a cold dread pooling inside me. "Laura," I muttered, crumpling the paper in my fist. She'd pulled it off, turned the system into her weapon. I called James, my voice tight as a wire. "It's real. The audit's happening." He swore, low and sharp. "She's got someone big behind her. No way she did this solo." Then he paused, cautious. "Emma, did Mark ever mention an offshore account?" My heart stuttered. "What?" "A secret one," he said, measured. "Off the books." I shook my head, panic rising. "No, he wouldn't," but doubt gnawed at me, cold and relentless. Mark had been so weak those last days. What if he'd slipped? The accountants found it the next morning. 10 million, hidden in a tangle of old files. I stood in the boardroom, staring at the screen, my legs shaky. "What is this?" I whispered, fear clawing up my throat. Greg, the lead accountant, a thin guy with glasses and a perpetual frown, shrugged. "Could be an investment, something personal. But if the feds see it first..." He didn't finish. I didn't need him to. Fraud, jail. Laura had known it was there. She'd baited the trap perfectly. I drove to her house that night, fury drowning out the fear. She was out on bail, lounging in her gaudy McMansion, her silk robe pristine, her smile poisonous. "Well, well," she purred, leaning against the doorframe. "Trouble at the top?" I shoved the bank records at her, my hands shaking with rage. "You set me up." She glanced at them, then laughed, a cruel, cutting sound. "Oh, Emma, did they find Mark's dirty little secret?" I stepped closer, my voice low and lethal. "You knew about it. You wanted me to take the fall." She leaned in, her breath hot on my face. "Of course I did. You're nothing, a placeholder. I'll watch you crash, and then I'll take everything." My blood roared, but I smiled, slow, deliberate. Her eyes narrowed. "What's so funny?" I pulled out my phone, the recording light glowing red. "Because I have a surprise for you," I said, and her smirk dissolved. Mark had mentioned that account, once, months back, his voice faint from the hospital bed. "Old investment," he'd mumbled, squeezing my hand. "Forgot about it." I'd brushed it off then, too lost in his fading light. But now it made sense, and the record showed Laura's theft in black and white. "I know what you did," I said into the phone, clear and cold. "And now everyone else will too." Her face went pale, panic flashing in her eyes. "You..." She started, lunging, but I stepped back. "It's over," I said. "I've sent it to James." She screamed, a raw, guttural sound as I turned away. "You wanted this so bad," I called over my shoulder. "Enjoy rotting for it." Her curses chased me down the drive, shrill and desperate. James filed charges by dawn: embezzlement, fraud, breaking and entering. The feds raided her place that afternoon, and I watched from Mark's office as the headlines hit. Jacobson's sister arrested in corporate heist. Olivia sat next to me, scrolling through the chaos online. "People love a downfall," she said, grinning, "and they're cheering for you." I nodded, but my mind was on Tyler, who'd risked his neck to warn me, on Dan, who'd sounded the alarm, on Mark, who'd seen this coming. Olivia's source called the next day. "Senator Claire Morgan," she said, putting it on speaker. "She's the one who pushed the audit. Laura promised her a slice of the AI contract with the government." My jaw tightened. Claire, sleek, calculating, with a politician's charm, had gripped my hand at the funeral, her condolences dripping with syrup. I met her the next evening in a dim cafe, her suit crisp, her eyes icy. I know you're behind this, I said, sliding Olivia's recording across the table. Back off or your name's on every front page tomorrow. She stared at it, her facade cracking. You wouldn't, she hissed. Watch me, I shot back. She folded, muttering, It's done, and I walked out, my pulse singing with triumph. The trial dragged 6 months, a brutal slog of Laura's lies and crocodile tears. Her lawyers painted her as a victim, me as a schemer. But the evidence, USB, bank records, footage, was a steel cage. Guilty. 15 years. As the bailiffs grabbed her, she turned to me, her voice breaking. Emma, wait, we're family. I stopped, looked at her, mascara streaked, desperate, and leaned close. You killed that when you betrayed Mark. She crumpled, sobbing, as they dragged her away. I stepped out of the courthouse, the air crisp, the weight lifting. I run Jacobson and Cody now, the way Mark dreamed, fair, fierce, alive. Tyler's my right hand, his loyalty a quiet strength. Olivia's book's a bestseller, her name on every talk show. The company's soaring, the eye contract secured, and I sit in Mark's chair, his mug still on my counter, a silent anchor. Laura's in a cell, her appeals dead, her assets gone, house, car, pride, all seized to repay her theft. She writes me sometimes, letters full of venom and pleas, but I don't read them. I burn them, watching the flames curl and feel nothing but peace. But last week, something shifted. A package arrived, no return address, just a plain envelope with a single photo inside. Mark, smiling, standing next to a man I don't know, the background a blur of green and glass. On the back, scrawled in black ink, he kept secrets from you too. My heart stuttered, a chill racing down my spine. I called James, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. We need to talk. He paused, then said, Come by tomorrow. I hung up, staring at the photo, Mark's face bright and alive. Laura's lost, but this feels like her ghost, reaching out from the ashes. I don't know what's coming, but I know I'll face it. I've fought worse and won. Life's a messy thing, isn't it? You think you've got it figured out, then it throws you a curveball. Mark taught me to stand tall, Laura taught me to fight dirty, and me, I've learned that trust is a blade that cuts both ways. What do you think? Did Mark hide more than I knew, or is Laura just twisting the knife one last time? Drop your thoughts below. I'm curious. And if you've ever faced a betrayal like this, tell me how you got through it. Maybe we've got more in common than you think.